I buried my husband 6 months ago. Yesterday, I saw him at the grocery store. I ran to him crying. He looked at me confused. I'm sorry. I think you've mistaken me for someone else. But the voice was identical, the marks on his face, everything. I followed him to his house. What I discovered was, my heart stopped when I saw him. There, between the aisles of canned goods at Costco, was Walter, my husband, the man I buried 6 months ago in an Italian marble crypt that cost $90,000. The man I cried for until I had no tears left. The man who was supposed to be dead, but he was alive, holding a shopping cart, checking the price of pinto beans. I dropped the bottle of olive oil I was holding. The glass shattered on the floor, golden oil spreading across the white linoleum. People stared. I didn't care. My legs moved on their own, running down that aisle as if I were 20 again, as if time hadn't turned my body into something slower, heavier. "Walter!" I screamed, and my voice came out strange, mixed with a sob that came from somewhere deep in my chest. "Walter, my God, you're alive!" He turned, and when those eyes met mine, I felt the world tilt. It was him, the same scar on his left eyebrow from the time he fell off his motorcycle at 20. The same slightly crooked nose, broken in a bar fight he never liked to talk about. The same birthmark on his neck, small, but one I knew like the lines on my own hand. I reached out my arms, wanting to touch him, to hold him, to feel that this was real and not some delusion of my lonely mind. But he took a step back. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, with that same gravelly voice I'd heard for 43 years. The voice that woke me up in the morning, that argued with me about money, that whispered. It loved me on cold nights. "I think you're confusing me with someone else." "Confusing you?" "No, Walter. It's me, Helen, your wife." I grabbed my phone with trembling hands, desperately searching for a picture of us. I found one from his last birthday before the accident. I showed him the screen, holding it too close to his face. "Look, it's us. You don't recognize me?" He looked at the photo. His eyes narrowed for a second, just 1 second. And then he shook his head, that gentle but firm movement I knew so well. "I'm sorry. My name is Robert Miller. I've never seen this picture in my life." He placed a hand on my shoulder, a brief, almost paternal touch. "You must be going through something difficult. Maybe you should sit down, have some water." Robert Miller. I watched him more closely. His clothes were different. Walter always wore button-down shirts, even on weekends. This man was wearing a faded Green Bay Packers t-shirt and worn-out jeans. His shoes were old sneakers, not the leather loafers Walter loved. But the face, my God, the face was identical. "Your finger," I whispered, pointing to his left hand. "Show me your left hand." He frowned, confused, but he raised his hand, and there it was. The crooked pinky finger, broken when Walter was 15 trying to fix his mother's roof. I felt my stomach churn. "Look, ma'am, I have to go," he said, already moving away. "I hope you feel better, but I'm really not who you think I am." He pushed his cart, turning down the aisle toward the checkout. I stood there, trembling, as an employee came to clean up the spilled oil. People walked past me, casting looks of pity or annoyance. I should have left. I should have sought help. But something inside me, that voice that always warned me when something was wrong, the same voice I had ignored so many times throughout my life, was screaming that this was no coincidence. I followed him. I kept my distance, hiding between the shelves like a thief. I saw him pay for his groceries with cash, refusing a receipt. I saw him leave the store and get into an old white Ford Taurus with a dent in the back door. I memorized the license plate, MZK 38847. I got into my car, the Honda Civic Walter had given me 2 years before he died, and followed him through the city streets. My heart was beating so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. We passed through downtown, through the neighborhood where we lived, and continued toward the west side, an area I rarely visited. He parked in front of a simple house, painted seafoam green, with a small garden and a white picket fence. A common, anonymous house. He got out of the car carrying the grocery bags, and then the front door opened. A woman appeared, younger than me, maybe in her 50s, with dark hair tied back in a ponytail. She smiled when she saw him. Not a polite neighbor's smile, a wife's smile. She kissed him on the cheek, took one of the bags, and then 2 children ran out the door. A boy and a girl, maybe 8 and 10 years old. They jumped on him, yelling, "Grandpa! Grandpa! Did you bring the ice cream?" "Grandpa!" He laughed, that lopsided laugh I knew so well. They all went inside the house together. The door closed. I sat in my car, parked about 50 yards away, as the afternoon sun streamed through the window and warmed my face, wet with tears I didn't even know I was crying. 43 years of marriage, 6 months of mourning, entire nights crying alone, clutching the pillow that still held his scent. And he was here, alive, with another family, with grandchildren I never knew existed. I took out my phone and took pictures of the house, the car, the license plate. My hands were shaking so much that half the photos were blurry, but I managed to get a few clear ones. As daylight began to fade, I started the car and drove home on autopilot. I don't remember the drive, only parking in the garage and sitting in the dark, looking at the photos on my phone, comparing them with old pictures of Walter. Every detail matched, every mark, every feature, every imperfection. I went inside the house, the large, empty house that Walter had left me. Or rather, that was left to me when he died. I sat in the living room, still with the lights off. And it was then that a question shot through my mind like a cold bolt of lightning. If Walter is alive, who the hell did we bury? If you want to know how this disturbing story unfolds, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters. Because what I was about to discover went far beyond what my mind could process at that moment. I stayed awake all night. Sitting at the kitchen table, with a small lamp on, I spread out all the photos I had of Walter. Photos from our wedding, of him still young, in that brown suit we rented because we couldn't afford to buy one. Photos of Mark's birthdays, our son. Photos from vacations, barbecues, Christmases. And next to them, on my phone screen, the pictures I had taken this afternoon. Zoom, zoom again. I compared every inch. The scar on his eyebrow, identical. The shape of his left ear, slightly larger than the right, the same. The birthmark on his neck, shaped like a small comma, in the exact same spot. Even the way he smiled crookedly, showing more teeth on the right side, was absolutely the same. I took a magnifying glass I used to read the fine print on medicine bottles and examined an old photo of Walter without a shirt, taken at a beach in the Florida Keys 15 years ago. There it was, the small dark mole near his collarbone. I zoomed in on the phone picture where Robert was turning to get the bag from the car. His shirt had ridden up a bit. The same mole, in the same place. Impossible. But twins wouldn't have the same birthmarks, right? Scars aren't genetic. And that broken finger. I stood up, paced the house, went back to the table. The wall clock read 4:20 a.m. Outside, the city was still asleep. I picked up the wedding album, ran my fingers over the faded images. There was Walter at 25, thin, smiling, with that thin mustache he later shaved off. There was I, at 22, wearing a simple white dress my mother had sewn, my hair pinned up with fresh flowers. We were poor. He worked as an assistant at a construction supply store. I was a seamstress. We lived in a rented room that barely fit a bed, but we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. When Mark was born 3 years later, things started to get better. Walter had a talent for sales. In 10 years, he went from assistant to manager. In 20 years, he owned 3 construction supply stores spread across the city. Our life changed. Our own house, a car, occasional trips. But Walter traveled a lot for work, 2, 3 times a month. He'd be gone for 4, 5 days, closing deals, he said, visiting suppliers. I never suspected a thing. Why would I? He always came back tired, stressed, complaining about meetings and highways. He brought gifts for me and Mark. He said he missed us. Now, looking back with this new lens of horror, every trip seemed like a carefully constructed lie. When the sun came up, I was still sitting at the table, surrounded by photos. I picked up my phone and called Mark. He answered on the 5th ring, his voice thick with sleep. Mom, it's 6 in the morning. Did something happen? I need you to come over right now. Now, Mom, I have a meeting at 9. Mark. My voice came out firm, loaded with something my son rarely heard. Come now, it's about your father. Silence on the other end. Mom, we've talked about this. You need to see a therapist. This prolonged grief, it's not. I saw your father yesterday. Another, longer silence. Mom, what have you taken? Did you forget to take one of your pills? Mark, I saw your father alive at the grocery store and I followed him to his house. I need you to come here now and help me understand what's happening, because either I'm going crazy or I already have. Stay there. Don't leave the house. Don't do anything. I'm on my way. He hung up. I went to shower, changed my clothes. When I looked in the mirror, I was startled. Deep, dark circles, disheveled hair, chapped lips. I looked like I had aged 10 years in one night. Mark arrived 40 minutes later. He was wearing gym clothes. He must have rushed out of the house. He came in without knocking, found me back at the kitchen table. Mom, what happened? He pulled up a chair, sat next to me, held my hand. His eyes were worried. That kind of worry children get when they think their parents are losing their minds. I showed him the photos, first the old ones, then the new ones, explaining every detail, the scar, the birthmark, the broken finger. I told him about the encounter at the store, how he treated me like a stranger, the fake name, the house, the woman, the children. Mark looked at the photos in silence. His expression began to change, from concern to confusion, from confusion to something I couldn't identify. His hands trembled slightly as he zoomed in on one of the pictures. Yeah, the resemblance is pretty striking, he said finally, handing back my phone. But Mom, people look alike. I've seen 3 guys at the mall who could be my twin brothers. Mark, it's not a resemblance. It's him. Mom, we buried Dad. You were there. I was there. Patricia, our uncles, his friends, everyone was there. A closed casket, I whispered. We buried a closed casket. Mark ran a hand over his face, tired. Because the body was, the accident was violent. The doctor said it was better this way, that you shouldn't see him. Did you see him? Did you see your father's body with your own eyes? Mark looked away. No, but the paperwork was all there. The MEA's office released the body. There was a death certificate. Everything was in order. I want to go to that house, I said, standing up. Now. You're coming with me. Mom, this is crazy. We can't just invade a stranger's house. So you think he's a stranger? He hesitated. I think you're traumatized, Mom. You've suffered a lot. You're still suffering. And the brain, when it's in deep grief, it can play tricks on you. Mark Anthony. I used his full name like I did when he was a kid and got into trouble. Are you coming with me to that house or am I going alone? Because I am going. He sighed, defeated. Okay, let's go. But just so you can see it's someone else and you can move on, okay? We left in his car, a late-model black Toyota Corolla. The morning traffic was already heavy. Mark drove in silence, his jaw tight. I gave him the directions. When we reached the street with the seafoam green house, I told him to park a few yards away. That's the one, I pointed. The white Ford Taurus was in the driveway. A light was on in the kitchen. We could see shadows moving through the curtains. Mark stared at the house. His fingers drummed on the steering wheel, something he'd done when he was nervous since he was a little boy. "Do you want me to go up there?" I asked. "No, wait." We sat there for maybe 5 minutes, then the front door opened. Robert came out wearing blue mechanic's overalls, carrying a toolbox. He walked to the Taurus. Mark turned pale. "Honey, are you all right?" He didn't answer, just stared intently at the man getting into the car. The Taurus backed out of the driveway, passed right by us. I could see his face clearly through the window. Walter. It was Walter, older, more tired, but it was him. The car turned the corner and disappeared. When I looked at Mark, I saw that he was crying. Silent tears were streaming down his face. "Mark?" My stomach turned to ice. "Mark, what aren't you telling me?" He rested his forehead on the steering wheel. "Mom!" His voice came out broken. "Mom, I'm so sorry." And in that moment, as the morning sun lit up the car's interior and my son fell apart beside me, I knew. I knew that what I was about to discover would destroy much more than just my marriage. It would destroy my entire family. "Talk," I ordered, and my voice came out hard as stone. "Talk now, Mark." He wiped his face with the back of his hand, taking a deep breath, trying to compose himself. But the tears kept falling. "Mom, it wasn't supposed to be like this. You were never supposed to find out." A cold feeling spread through my chest. "Find out what?" Mark lifted his head, looked at me with those brown eyes he inherited from his father. Eyes that now carried guilt, fear, shame. Dad didn't die in that accident. The words hung in the air between us, simple, direct, devastating. I already knew. Deep down, from the moment I saw him in the store, I knew. But hearing my son confirm, it was like a punch to the gut. "Go on," I whispered. He had this other family, Mom, for 25 years. That woman, Claudia, her kids, who now have kids of their own. He was living a double life between you two for 25 years. 25 years of lies. I thought of all the trips, all the nights he didn't come home, all the weekends working, all of Mark's birthdays he missed because he was closing an important deal. "And you knew?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the way he avoided my gaze. "I found out about 3 years ago." He ran a hand through his hair, nervous. "It was an accident. I was helping Dad organize some papers from the store, and I found receipts, duplicate purchases, payments for electricity, water, groceries. For 2 houses. I confronted him. And what did he say? That he loved you, Mom. That he never wanted to hurt you, but that he loved Claudia too. That he met her on a business trip out of state. That it was something that just happened and then he couldn't leave her. He said he tried to end it several times, but he couldn't." I laughed, a bitter, humorless laugh. How convenient. The poor man couldn't leave his mistress. "Mom, and you?" I turned to him, feeling anger for the first time. "You found out, and what? You accepted it? You kept his secret?" He begged me to. Mark's voice rose in desperation. He said if you found out it would destroy everything, that you'd take half the stores from him, the house, everything. He said he needed time to sort things out, to protect his assets. "You mean his money," I corrected. Mark lowered his head. "I didn't know what to do. He's my father, Mom. And in a way, I didn't want everything to be lost either. The stores, the business he built, which would be mine one day." So that was it. Greed. Pure and simple greed. "Tell me everything," I ordered. "From the beginning. I want to know every detail of this sham." Mark took a deep breath, wiped his face again. 6 months ago, Dad came to me. He said he couldn't stand living a double life anymore, that he wanted to be with Claudia for good. to start over with just her. But if he asked for a divorce, I'd get half of everything. I completed the sentence, feeling nauseous. He'd consulted a lawyer, community property state. You were married for over 40 years. You'd be entitled to half the stores, the house, the savings, about $2.5 million, maybe more. $2.5 million. 43 years of marriage were worth $2.5 million that he didn't want to share with me. So you planned his death? It wasn't exactly like that. He had the idea. He said he knew a guy, a homeless man, who was terminally ill, no family. The guy was really dying, Mom, a matter of weeks. Dad, offered him money, a lot of money. How much? $50,000, for the guy's only niece, who lived out of state and never visited him. The money would be transferred after he died. I felt like I was going to be sick. You bought a body. The guy was dying anyway, Mark defended, but his voice was weak. He accepted, said at least his niece would have a better life. And the accident was staged. Dad drove to that small town, Cedar Creek, like he always did. But this time, the man was with him. They caused a real car accident, but a minor one, just enough to call the police, to file a report. The man was taken to the hospital under Dad's name. He had his documents, his wallet, everything. And when he died 3 days later, they issued the death certificate as if it were Walter. Yes, the body came in a sealed casket because it was supposedly disfigured in the accident and then at the hospital. I insisted you not open it, Mom, because inside was the corpse of a stranger. Mark nodded, ashamed. I fell silent, processing, remembering those terrible days. The call from the police, the race to the hospital. Mark stopping me from entering the room, saying the doctor didn't recommend it, that the sight would be too traumatic. I remembered the funeral, the closed casket covered in white flowers, the people crying, Walter's friends offering condolences, the priest talking about the brevity of life, about the legacy we leave behind. And the whole time, Walter was alive, planning his new life, leaving me behind as if our 43 years together meant nothing. And the crypt? My voice came out strange, distant. The Italian marble crypt that cost $90,000. Mom, there is a body in there. The man who died. He was buried as Walter T. Peterson, with his documents, his identity. And Walter took half the money we had saved for emergencies, about $1.8 million that was in investments under his name. He transferred it all a few days before the accident, moved to a new city, created a new identity. Robert Miller. Started a new life with Claudia, with the grandchildren I never knew existed, with his other family. Yes. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, tried not to scream, not to hit, not to break something. And you? I opened my eyes, stared at my son. What did you get out of this whole story? Mark swallowed hard. The stores. All 3 of them. As the sole heir, they automatically passed to me. Plus the house, which was already in my name for the last couple of years for estate planning. How much are the stores worth, Mark? How much? About $3.2 million. But I've already sold 2. I just kept the biggest one, on the main avenue. I invested the rest of the money. So you profited from this. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I took care of you, Mom. I gave you a monthly allowance of, how much? $1,500. I laughed. A loud, almost hysterical laugh. $1,500, less than a housekeeper makes. While you got $3 million, your father ran off with almost $2 million, and I was left here crying every night, taking sleeping pills, going to a support group for widows. The tears finally came, hot, bitter, angry. I mourned him, Mark. I cried until I couldn't breathe. I'd look at his picture on the nightstand and beg God to take me too, because I couldn't bear the pain of living without him. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "And you knew," I screamed, finally losing control. "You knew and you let me suffer. You let me spend $90,000 on a crypt for a stranger. You let me believe my husband was dead while he was alive, happy, with another family. I didn't know what to do. He's my father. And I'm your mother." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Mark was crying openly now, but I felt no pity. I felt only an icy, controlled rage that was growing in my chest like a storm. "Take me home," I said calmly. "Mom, we need to talk about—" "Take me home." He drove in silence. When we arrived, I got out of the car without looking back. "Mom, please." I slammed the door and went inside. I went straight to the bedroom, gathered all the photos of Walter and put them in a box. 43 years of memories. Wedding, birthdays, trips, smiles, hugs, all lies. I closed the box and put it on the highest shelf in the closet. Then I sat on the bed and looked around. The big empty house, the empty life, the last 6 months of wasted grief. And I started to plan. Because if there was one thing my 68 years of life had taught me, it was that you can't trust anyone. Not your husband, not your son, only yourself. And I was going to make them both pay, each in their own way. But first, I needed proof. Proof that couldn't be denied, ignored, or explained away. Proof that would destroy the perfect little life they had built on the foundation of my tears. For the next 3 days, I didn't answer any of Mark's calls. He called 47 times, sent 63 text messages, showed up at my front door twice, ringing the bell insistently. I saw him through the bedroom window, but I didn't open it. I didn't want to see his face. Not yet. Because I needed time to think, to plan, and most importantly, to bury what was left of the naive Helen and replace her with someone stronger. On the 4th day, I woke up different. I took a long shower, got dressed, put on lipstick for the first time in months, grabbed my purse, and left. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, was watering her plants. "Good morning, Helen. You look lovely today." She smiled, surprised. It had been a long time since she'd seen me dressed up. "Good morning, Teresa. I'm just going to take care of some business." I smiled back. A smile that didn't reach my eyes. I drove to the city center. I had searched online and found what I was looking for. Gus Investigations. The office was in an old building, 3rd floor, room 305. I walked up the stairs, the elevator was broken, and knocked on the frosted glass door with the name painted in peeling gold letters. "Come in," a gruff voice answered. The office was small, cramped, smelling of stale coffee and cigarettes. Behind a desk piled high with papers sat a man in his 60s, bald, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked at me over his reading glasses. "Can I help you?" "I need to hire your services," I said, sitting in the chair across from him without waiting for an invitation. He leaned back, sizing me up. I knew what he saw. A gray-haired lady, well-dressed, with discreet jewelry. Someone with money. "What kind of service?" "An investigation. On a person." I took out my phone, showed him the picture of Robert I had taken. "I need to know everything about this man. Where he lives, where he works, who he associates with, how much money he has. Everything." Gus took the phone, enlarged the photo. "Cheating husband?" "Ex-husband, who's supposed to be dead." That got his attention. He leaned forward. "Interesting story. Go on." I told him. Not everything, but enough. The accident, the funeral, the encounter at the store, the other family. I didn't mention Mark. Not yet. I would save that card to play at the right moment. Gus listened in silence, making occasional notes in an old notepad. "And you want proof?" he concluded when I finished. "I want everything. Documents, photos, recordings if possible. I need something that is undeniable. This is going to cost you, for a job of this level, $10,000, half now, half when I deliver the full report. I opened my purse, took out my checkbook, filled one out for $5,000, and handed it to him. I want results in a week. Gus smiled, showing coffee-stained teeth. You're a direct woman. I like that. He put the check away. I'll need some information. His full name, any documents you have, anything that can help. His real name is Walter T. Peterson. The fake one is Robert Miller. I wrote down the details on a piece of paper, including the address of the Seafoam greenhouse, the license plate of the Ford Taurus, the approximate time he left for work. Excellent. I'll start today. I'll call you if I find anything. I left the office feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. In the following days, I went back to that street, always at different times, wearing hats or scarves to disguise myself. I watched their routine. Robert left every day at 7 a.m., driving the old Taurus. He returned at 6 p.m. On Saturdays, he stayed home, playing with his grandchildren in the yard. On Sundays, they all went to the 10 a.m. Mass at the neighborhood church, the perfect life, the happy family. While I, the legal wife, cried alone in the dark. Claudia seemed to be a homemaker. She didn't work outside. She took care of the house, the grandchildren when her daughters were at work. She was attractive for her age, well kept. She wore simple but neat clothes. She smiled a lot. I hated her. A week later, Gus called me. I have the report. You can come pick it up. I was at his office in 20 minutes. He handed me a thick brown folder full of documents. Sit down, he said. Seriously, you're going to want to be sitting for this. I opened the folder. The first page was a copy of Robert Miller's birth certificate. Date of issue, 7 years ago. Registered in a small town clerk's office out of state. It's a fake, Gus explained. A good one, but fake. The original certificate for that name belongs to a baby who died in the 50s. Your husband bought the identity. I turned the page. Photos of Walter entering and leaving a small auto shop with a sign above the door. Miller's Keys and Repairs. He works there, Gus continued. He's a locksmith. Makes about $3,000 a month. Simple, modest life. And the money? I asked. The $1.8 million he had. Gus turned to another section of the folder. Bank statements. Lots of bank statements. This is where it gets interesting. 7 years ago, a Robert Miller opened accounts at 3 different banks, with initial deposits totaling $1.6 million. Since then, he's been withdrawing about $8,000 a month, leaving the rest in conservative funds. So the money was there. The money that was also mine. By community property law, half of that $1.8 million was mine. There's more. Gus turned another page. I got access to his phone records from the last 6 months. My heart sped up. Multiple calls to the same number, about 200 in total, some lasting over an hour. He circled a number with a red pen. Did you identify whose it is? I asked, though something in my gut already knew the answer. Gus looked at me seriously. It's your son's, Mark A. Peterson. There it was, in black and white, the proof of the double betrayal. Calls before the accident. Calls during the 6 months I spent in mourning. Calls last week after I confronted Mark. They talk regularly, Gus said. Before, during, and after the staged death. Your son was in on it from the beginning. I felt my hands tremble. I closed the folder. Anything else? Yes. The house they live in isn't in Robert's name. It's in Claudia's name. Purchased 22 years ago. They have a son together, 23 years old, who lives in New York, and 3 grandchildren, from her 2 daughters from a previous relationship. So he really did build an entire life for 25 years. Seems so. And from what I could gather, Claudia doesn't know he was married before. To her, Robert Miller has always been Robert Miller, a widower he met out of state. I took the folder, put it in my purse. How much do I owe you? The other 5,000. I wrote the check. As I handed it to him, Gus held my hand. Look, normally I don't get involved, but you seem like a decent person. Whatever you're planning to do with this information, think carefully. These cases of document fraud, staged death, that's federal crime. Prison time. You understand? I understand perfectly, I said, smiling for the first time since I discovered the truth. Thank you for your concern, Gus, but I know exactly what I'm going to do. I left the office clutching the folder as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. It was the key to completely destroying the lives of the two men who had destroyed mine. At home, I spread all the documents on the living room table. Photos, statements, call logs, fake certificates. I read everything, memorized every detail. Then I picked up the phone and made a call I had been putting off. Law Offices of Simone Wright. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'd like to make an appointment with Ms. Wright. It's urgent. Are you already a client, ma'am? No. But I have a case of racketeering, document forgery, and asset fraud that I think will interest her very much. A pause on the other end. Can you come tomorrow at 3 p.m.? I'll be there. I hung up and looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and pink. A beautiful, peaceful day. The last day of peace Walter and Mark would have for a very long time. Because the storm was just beginning, and I was going to be the lightning that destroyed everything. Simone Wright was not what I expected. When I walked into her office, a modern space on the 10th floor of a downtown commercial building, I found a woman in her 40s, black, with curly hair pulled back in a flawless bun, wearing a gray suit that exuded competence. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, the kind that didn't miss a single detail. Mrs. Peterson? She extended a hand, her grip firm. Please, have a seat. I sat in the leather chair across from her desk. Through the windows, I could see the entire city. Down below, people lived their normal lives, oblivious to the dramas happening on the floors above. Coffee? Water? No, thank you. I'll get straight to the point. Simone settled into her chair, folded her hands on the desk. My assistant said you have a case of racketeering and fraud. Tell me about it. I placed Gus's folder on the table and began to speak. I told her everything from the beginning, the 43 years of marriage, Walter's constant travels, the second family that lasted 25 years, the fake accident, the purchased body, the funeral I genuinely cried at while my husband was alive, the son who knew and hid it, the millions siphoned off, the miserable allowance they gave me as if it were a favor. Simone listened without interrupting, making occasional notes. When I finished, she opened the folder and began to examine the documents. It took her almost 20 minutes, reading each page with intense focus. Finally, she leaned back in her chair and whistled softly. Mrs. Peterson, this is a bombshell. I know. Do you understand the gravity of what has happened here? We're talking about multiple crimes: identity fraud, racketeering, concealment of a corpse, document forgery, tax evasion. She ticked them off on her fingers. Your husband and your son could get 3 to 8 years in prison, each. I felt a cold satisfaction in my chest. Good. She looked at me, appraising. You want to press criminal charges against both of them. I want justice. I want every penny that was stolen from me back. I want them to pay for what they did. Then we need to build an ironclad case. Simone picked up a pen. I'll need a few more things. First, your marriage documents, the fake death certificate, documents for the stores. I have everything at home. I can bring it tomorrow. Second, a confession would be ideal. You said your son confessed. Do you have a recording? My stomach sank. No, it was in the car. I wasn't expecting it. All right, we'll need to get him to confess again, but this time, recorded. How? Simone smiled. A smile from someone who had done this many times before. Leave that to me. But first, let's talk about money. You said your son got the stores? 3 stores, valued at $3.2 million. He's already sold 2. And where is that money? I don't know. Invested somewhere. We'll find out. Because under community property law, even with your husband's death, you were entitled to 50% of everything built during the marriage. That includes the stores. But he was the sole heir. Heir to a fake dead man. Simone leaned forward. Mrs. Peterson, your husband didn't die. Therefore, there was no legitimate inheritance. The stores should never have passed to your son. They still belong to the marital estate. It took me a few seconds to process. So my son sold properties that weren't legally his. That is aggravated racketeering, and all the money from those sales needs to return to the estate for proper division. The magnitude of the situation began to dawn on me. How much could I recover? Simone took out a calculator, started crunching numbers. The stores. 3.2 million half is yours, 1.6 million. Plus the 1.8 million your husband took, half is yours, 900,000. Plus punitive damages for fraud, psychological distress. We can easily ask for 500,000. She looked at me. We're talking about roughly $3 million, Mrs. Peterson. Plus the house if you want it. $3 million. 43 years of marriage, of dedication, of being a wife and mother, were worth $3 million they had stolen from me. And the prison time? I asked. The criminal case is a separate process, but with the evidence we have here, she tapped the folder, I'd say we have a 90% chance of conviction, especially with the recorded confession we're going to get. How are we going to do that? Simone took a small digital recorder from her drawer. You're going to invite your son to lunch. You're going to tell him you want to make peace, that you understand he was in a difficult position. You're going to make him comfortable. And then, naturally, you're going to steer the conversation back to the subject. Get him to repeat the confession. All of this, she held up the recorder, will be recorded. He won't suspect? Not if you're a good actress. And from the look on your face, Mrs. Peterson, I think you've spent the last few months being an excellent actress. She was right. How many times had I smiled when I wanted to cry? How many times had I pretended to be fine when I was falling apart inside? There's one more thing, Simone said, her tone serious. We need documentary evidence of your son's transactions. The sale of the stores, bank transfers, where he put the money. He probably keeps those documents in his office, at the store he kept. Can you get access? I thought about it. Mark had given me a copy of the key to the store years ago for emergencies. I'd never used it, but I still had it. I can. Excellent. Because if we get those documents proving he forged signatures, sold properties fraudulently... She slapped the desk with satisfaction. It's over. He has no defense. I left Simone's office 2 hours later with a detailed plan, a plan that would completely destroy my son's life. And for the first time since I discovered the truth, I didn't feel guilt. I felt power. That night, I finally answered one of Mark's 83 calls. Mom, thank God, I was so worried, I thought... Mark, I interrupted, keeping my voice calm, controlled. Can we talk? A surprised silence on the other end. Of course, Mom, of course. Do you want me to come over? No. I want you to have lunch with me tomorrow. At the Terrace Grill, that restaurant you like. Noon. Yes. I'll be there, Mom. Until tomorrow, son. I hung up before he could continue. I went to my room, opened the dresser drawer where I kept important things. There, at the bottom, under old scarves, was the key to the store. I picked it up. I felt the cold weight of the metal in the palm of my hand. Tomorrow, during lunch with Mark, while he confessed everything again, thinking I was forgiving him, that I was being the understanding mother I always was, Simone would be at the store with a search warrant, collecting every document, every piece of proof, every shred of evidence of his betrayal. And after lunch, when I had the recording and she had the documents, we would present everything to the district attorney's office. Mark would be arrested within 48 hours. Walter, or Robert, or whatever name he was using now, would be exposed, would lose everything, and would have to return every cent he stole from me, with interest. And I would finally have what I deserved from the beginning: respect. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was no longer the Helen who cried for 6 months. She was no longer the naive wife who believed every lie. She was someone new, someone stronger, someone who would have no mercy. The Terrace Grill was on the top floor of a downtown hotel with a panoramic view of the city. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing a discreet beige dress and the pearl necklace Walter gave me on our 30th wedding anniversary. Ironic. To wear that necklace today of all days. The digital recorder was in my purse, already on. Simone had instructed me to leave the purse open on the table, as close to Mark as possible. The device was sensitive. It would pick up everything. Mark arrived 5 minutes later, looking exhausted. Deep, dark circles, unshaven, his dress shirt wrinkled. He saw me and almost ran to the table. "Mom." His voice was thick with emotion. He tried to hug me. I allowed it, but without warmth. A quick, formal hug. We sat down. The waiter brought the menu. I ordered a grilled salmon I had no intention of eating. Mark ordered a steak, but from the way he was fidgeting with his napkin, he had no appetite either. "Mom, I don't even know where to begin." "Then don't," I said, taking a sip of water. "Let me speak first." He nodded eagerly. "I've spent the last few days thinking a lot about everything you told me, about your father, about the choices you both made." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "And I understand you were in an impossible position." I saw the surprise in his eyes. "Mom, let me finish. Your father is a manipulator. He always has been. He put you in a situation where you had to choose between him and me, between protecting the family's assets or telling me the truth." I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to sound conciliatory. "You were the son. It wasn't your responsibility to fix the mess he made." Mark started to cry, thick tears streaming down his face. "I wanted to tell you, Mom, every single day, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing you, afraid of destroying everything." "I know." I reached out, held his hand on the table. The touch repulsed me, but I kept my expression gentle. "But now I need to understand a few things. I need you to tell me everything again, from the beginning, because only then will I be able to process it and, maybe, forgive." He squeezed my hand, desperate for this chance at redemption I was offering. "Anything, Mom. Ask anything." "When exactly did your father approach you with this plan?" "About 7 months before the fake accident. He came home late one night, asked to talk. Said he couldn't stand living a double life anymore, that he wanted to be with Claudia only." "And he told you about her then?" "No, I already knew. I had found out about 3 years prior. Remember I told you? But that night he said he wanted to make it official, to ask for a divorce. Except you convinced him not to." Mark looked down, ashamed. I showed him the numbers. How much you would get. Half the stores, half of everything. He panicked. The stores were his life, Mom. He built that from scratch. "With my support," I reminded him, keeping my voice neutral. "With my work, too. While he was running the business, who do you think raised you? Who took care of the house? Who gave up her own career as a seamstress so he could work late?" "I know, Mom. I know." He wiped his face with a napkin. But in that moment, all I could think was that we were going to lose everything. That years of work would go down the drain. "So you suggested the fake death?" "No, it wasn't me, it was him. He had the idea. He said he knew a guy, a homeless man who was dying of cancer, who had no one. He'd give $50,000 to the man's niece if he agreed to die as Walter T. Peterson. The waiter brought our plates. We waited in silence until he left. Mark didn't even touch his food. "And you thought that was a good idea?" I asked. "I thought it was crazy. But Dad is persuasive, you know that. He said it would be perfect, that no one would suspect, that you would get the house and a good allowance, that I would get the stores to secure your future too." "What good allowance, Mark?" $1,500. He swallowed hard. I wanted to give you more, Mom, but the stores were having cash flow problems. I had to sell 2 to pay off debts that Dad had hidden." "Debts? What debts?" "Suppliers, back taxes." Mark ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Dad was a good salesman, but a terrible administrator. When I took over, I found out there was almost $800,000 in debt he never mentioned. So, Walter wasn't just a traitor, he was incompetent too. And where is the money from the sales now? I paid off the debts. The rest, about $1.4 million, is invested in funds. I was saving it for you, eventually." A lie, but I let it pass. "Tell me about the day of the accident. How did it happen?" Mark took a deep breath, diving into the memory. "Dad traveled like he always did to that town, Cedar Creek. The guy, Tony, was already waiting. They caused a real but controlled car accident. They hit a tree on a rural road, called an ambulance. When he got to the hospital, Tony had all of Dad's documents, ID, driver's license, health insurance card, everything. And no one suspected? His face was bruised from the accident. And he was semi-conscious, not speaking clearly. The doctors just wanted to stabilize him. 3 days later, he died for real, from the cancer, and they issued the death certificate, as Walter T. Peterson. Yes, I went to get the body, came in the hearse straight to the wake. I insisted the casket remain sealed because, well, you know, because inside was a stranger. Mark nodded, miserable. "And your father, where was he during the funeral?" "He had already left town, took a bus to Chicago, then another one to here. He stayed in a cheap motel for a few days, waiting for everything to cool down. Then he rented the house where he is now. Started working as a locksmith. Simple life, not drawing attention. With the money he stole from me, Mom. $1.8 million, Mark. Money that was also mine." My voice was getting harder, but I forced myself to control it. I couldn't lose my composure now. "Where is that money?" "In accounts under the name Robert Miller. 3 different banks, conservative investments. He withdraws about $8,000 a month to supplement his locksmith salary." Exactly what Gus had discovered. "Do you still keep in touch?" "Yes." Mark lowered his voice. "He calls me every week, asks about you, how you're coping. I think he still cares, you know?" I laughed, a bitter, humorless laugh. "Cares? Mark, he left me believing he was dead. He let me cry over an empty grave. He let me spend $90,000 on a marble crypt for a stranger. That's not caring. That's cowardice." "I know." His voice was a whisper. "I know, Mom. And I'm so sorry. If I could go back..." "But you can't." I dropped his hand. "Neither of you can." A heavy silence fell between us. "What are you going to do?" he finally asked, fear in his voice. I looked at him. My son. The boy I carried for 9 months, who I nursed, who I took care of when he was sick, who I helped with his homework, who I comforted after his first breakup, the man who betrayed me as deeply as his father had. "I don't know yet," I lied, "but I need time alone to think." "How much time?" "As much as it takes." I stood up, grabbing my purse, making sure the recorder had captured everything. "Mom, wait." "Goodbye, Mark." I walked out of the restaurant without looking back, leaving him alone with his untouched food and the guilt that he now carried alone. In the car, I allowed myself a moment, a single moment of real pain. Because no matter how many times I told myself he deserved it, that they had used me, that they deserved to pay. He was still my son, and a part of me died having to destroy him. But the larger part, the part that spent 6 months in a fake mourning, the part that was treated like a fool for 43 years, that part was satisfied. I called Simone. I got the recording. Perfect. And I got the documents. You won't believe what I found. Tell me. Your son forged your signature on at least 15 different documents. Sales, transfers, powers of attorney, all fake. He didn't even try to disguise it well. And is that enough to prosecute him criminally and win? Absolutely. I'm preparing the complaint now. I'll file it with the DA's office tomorrow morning. And how long until he's arrested? 72 hours, Max. The judge who will get this case is known for having zero tolerance for financial fraud against the elderly. Your son will be sleeping in a jail cell before the end of the week. I closed my eyes, resting my head on the steering wheel. And Walter? Technically, he can't be arrested because he's legally dead. But I can file a motion to invalidate all of Robert Miller's documents, freeze his accounts, and force him to return everything that's yours with interest. He'll be left with nothing, Helen. He'll have to start from scratch at 73. 73 years old. The same age he would be if he hadn't died at 70. Do it, I said, opening my eyes. Do everything. Are you sure? Because once we start, there's no going back. I thought about the 43 years, the lies, the fake grief, the 6 months crying alone, the miserable allowance, the second family he chose instead of ours. Absolutely sure. Then tomorrow, the war begins. Prepare yourself, Helen. It's going to get ugly. Let it. I hung up and drove home. That night, I slept for the first time in 6 months without needing a pill. Because finally, after so long of being the victim, I had become the hunter. And the hunt was just beginning. The complaint was filed on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. Simone called to confirm. It's done. The DA's office accepted the case. The prosecutor is ADA Flavia Mendez, known for being relentless in cases of crimes against the elderly. She's already requested an arrest warrant for Mark. How long until the warrant is issued? 48 hours, tops. She argued risk of flight and destruction of evidence. The judge will approve it. 2 hours later, I got a call from Mark. I ignored it. He called 4 more times, sent texts. Mom, I need to talk to you urgently. Mom, something serious has happened. Please pick up. I blocked his number because I knew what had happened. Simone had warned me that the DA's office would formally notify all parties involved. Mark had received the summons, knew he was under investigation, and must have been desperate. On Wednesday morning, he showed up at my door. He banged on it insistently, shouted my name. The neighbors started peering out their windows. Mrs. Peterson came out onto her porch, concerned. Helen, is everything all right over there? I opened the bedroom window. It's fine, Teresa. Just a family misunderstanding. It'll be resolved soon. Mark saw me. Mom, for the love of God, open this door. Go away, Mark. Did you do this? Did you report me? Go away. I'm your son, your only son. My son died along with my husband, I shouted back, and the pain in my voice was real. 6 months ago. What's left is a stranger who robbed me. I closed the window. He stayed for another 10 minutes yelling, banging on the door, then finally left. I cried. Not because I felt sorry for him, but because what I had said was true. The Mark I knew, the boy I raised, no longer existed. Maybe he never had. On Thursday at 6 a.m., the police knocked on Mark's door. Simone notified me by text. He's been arrested. No resistance. Being transferred to the precinct now. I pictured the scene. Patricia, his wife, waking up to the noise. The police entering. Mark being handcuffed. The neighbors watching. The shame. The public humiliation. Exactly what I felt when I discovered the truth. Patricia called me 3 hours later, sobbing. How could you do this to him? To your own son? Ask him what he did to me first, I replied calmly. Ask him about the millions he stole, about the forged signatures, about letting me believe my husband was dead while he pocketed everything. He was protecting the family. He was protecting his wallet, and now he's going to pay for it. I hung up before she could finish. I blocked her number too. That afternoon, I met Simone at her office. She had more documents spread across the table. Good news, your son panicked. He tried to wire $800,000 last night to an account in Paraguay. He has an account in Paraguay? He did. Opened it last week after you talked to him. He probably sensed you were going to do something. But you said he tried to transfer? Yes. Because I had already asked the judge to freeze all his accounts preventively. The transfer was blocked, and now he's being held without bail for attempted capital flight, on top of everything else. How long could he be in prison? With good behavior? 3 years minimum, but considering the number of crimes, the evidence we have, the serial forgery, he could get up to 8. 8 years. Mark would be 53 when he got out. And the stores? We've already filed for the annulment of all sales. Since they were made with falsified documents using forged signatures, the transactions are null and void. The buyers will be reimbursed by the bank that brokered the deal, and the properties returned to the correct estate. Which would be me and my husband, under community property law, 50-50. Since he's technically dead, his share is in limbo until we resolve that situation. And how are we going to resolve it? Simone smiled. With a nuclear explosion. She opened a new folder. I found something interesting. Remember you said Robert Miller has a fake birth certificate? Yes, issued 7 years ago. Well, to get a duplicate birth certificate, you need foundational documents, an ID, proof of residence, something to prove who you are. Your husband used fake documents for that too. So I tracked down who made those documents. A fixer here in the city, a guy named Eddie Tavares. He's been arrested twice for forgery but always managed to make a deal. I talked to him yesterday. He sang like a canary. Simone tapped the folder. I have a signed affidavit from him, confessing that he created all the fake documentation for Robert Miller at the request of Walter T. Peterson, for a payment of $45,000. I have copies of the original documents he kept. The idiot keeps everything as insurance. And I have the bank transfers proving the payment. I felt a shiver of satisfaction. It means we can prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Robert Miller is a false identity created by Walter T. Peterson. We can invalidate all his documents, all his bank accounts, everything. And we can prosecute him for identity fraud, use of a false document, and racketeering even though he's dead. Oh, this is the best part. Simone leaned back in her chair, pleased. We are going to petition for the annulment of his death certificate. Since it was issued based on fraud, a body that wasn't his, it's null. Walter T. Peterson legally never died. Therefore, he is juridically alive, and as a living person, he can be prosecuted, tried, and imprisoned. The magnitude of what she was saying hit me like a wave. You're saying he's going to be arrested? I'm saying he's going to have to go back to being Walter T. Peterson. He's going to have to abandon the identity of Robert Miller. He's going to have to publicly admit he faked his own death, and then yes, he's going to be arrested for fraud, forgery, and concealment of a corpse. And Claudia, the woman he lives with. I found out they got married in a civil ceremony 5 years ago, as Robert Miller and Claudia Morales. Except that marriage is void, because Robert Miller doesn't exist. And Walter T. Peterson was already married to you. Technically, he's a bigamist. Bigamy, another crime for the list. Does she know any of this? From what I've investigated, no. To her, Robert is just Robert, a widower she met and fell in love with. Poor woman's in for a shock. I felt a pang of something. Pity, maybe, for Claudia. She had been deceived in her own way, too. But the pity passed quickly. She had 25 years with my husband. 25 years that were mine. "When do we do this?" I asked. "I'm already preparing all the paperwork. I'll file it next week. In the meantime, I want you to do something." "What?" Simone handed me an envelope. "A legal notice. I want you to deliver it to your husband yourself." "Me?" "You, personally, looking him in the eye. I want him to know that it was you who destroyed his perfect little life. Not a lawyer, not a process server. You." I took the envelope. Inside were several pages of legal terms that basically summarized, "I know who you are. I know what you did. And now you're going to pay. What if he runs? I've already requested a freeze on all his accounts. He has no money to run. And when the arrest warrant is issued, the police will be watching. He's not going anywhere." I left the office holding the envelope as if it were a weapon, because it was. That night, I sat in the living room with a bottle of wine, something I hadn't done in years. I drank slowly, savoring it, planning. Tomorrow, I would go to the Seafoam greenhouse. I would knock on the door. And when Robert opened it, when he recognized me, when that panic crossed his eyes, I would smile and hand him the envelope that would destroy everything he had built on the ashes of my pain. Because it was my turn now. My turn to watch him lose everything. My turn to leave him crying, desperate, powerless. Exactly as he had left me for 6 long months. Justice was coming, and she had my face. Friday, 10 a.m. I parked the car 3 houses down from the Seafoam greenhouse. I picked up the thick envelope from the seat next to me, took 3 deep breaths. My hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. 43 years had led to this moment. I got out of the car, walked slowly down the sidewalk. The November day was hot, the sun beating down. I could hear children playing in a nearby yard, the sound of a soap opera drifting from a house window, normal life going on as I prepared to blow someone's up. I stopped in front of the gate. The white Ford Taurus was in the driveway. He was home. I rang the doorbell. Footsteps approaching. The door opened. Claudia, the woman I had seen through the window that first day. Prettier up close, a kind face, curious eyes. "Yes?" "Good morning. I'm looking for Robert." "He's in the back fixing the fence. Can I help you with something?" "I need to speak with him personally. It's important." She hesitated, sizing me up. A well-dressed, polite lady. Nothing threatening. "I'll get him. One moment." The door closed. I heard muffled voices inside, then heavier footsteps approaching. The door opened again, and there he was. Walter, my husband, wearing an old paint-stained t-shirt, faded shorts, flip-flops. His gray hair was disheveled, his face sweaty, but it was him, unmistakably. Our eyes met. I saw the immediate recognition, the shock, the fear. "Helen," he whispered, and hearing my name from that mouth after so long felt like a slap. "Hello, Walter," I smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "Or should I call you Robert?" He glanced back to where Claudia probably was. Then his eyes returned to me, desperate. "What are you doing here?" "I came to deliver some mail." I held out the envelope. "Legal notice. You need to sign for receipt." He didn't take it, just stared at me, pale. "How did you find me?" "It wasn't hard. You hid yourself very poorly. Same city, same habits, same face. Did you think I'd never find you? That I'd spend the rest of my life crying at your empty grave? Helen, I can explain." "You can?" I laughed without humor. "Are you going to explain how you faked your own death? How you bought the body of a dying man? How you let me bury a stranger thinking it was you? How you stole almost $2 million that was also mine?" "Lower your voice," he whispered, looking nervously toward the house. Claudia doesn't know?" I raised my voice intentionally. Claudia doesn't know that Robert Miller doesn't exist? That you're Walter T. Peterson, legally married to me for 43 years? The door opened completely. Claudia appeared, confused. Robert, what's going on? Who is this woman? Walter closed his eyes, defeated. Claudia, go back inside. I'm his wife, I answered before he could. His legal wife, Helen Peterson, married to Walter T. Peterson since 1982. This man you know as Robert is my husband. He faked his own death 6 months ago to run away from me and be with you. Claudia's face lost all its color. What nonsense is this? Robert, tell her this is a lie. Walter opened his mouth, but nothing came out. It's not a lie, I continued, relentless. He has a scar on his left eyebrow from when he fell off a motorcycle at 20. He has a crooked pinky finger on his left hand, broken at 15. He has a birthmark on his neck shaped like a comma. Do you want me to continue? Or you can check for yourself those marks you know so well. Claudia looked at Walter, waiting for him to deny it, but he just hung his head. Robert! Her voice came out broken. Robert, look at me. Tell me this isn't true. Claudia, I can explain. She recoiled as if she'd been struck. My God, it's true. It's all true. Claudia, listen to me. You lied to me, she screamed, and the pain in her voice echoed down the entire street. 25 years. You deceived me for 25 years. Who are you? I'm the same man you know. You don't even have a real name. Tears streamed down her face. Robert doesn't even exist. You're She couldn't finish, turning and running back into the house. Walter took a step to follow her, but stopped, looking at me with a mixture of anger and despair. Are you happy now? You've destroyed my life. Your life? My voice was low, dangerous. You destroyed mine first. 43 years, Walter. For 43 years I was your wife. Faithful, dedicated, present. I raised our son alone while you were building another family. I cried at your fake death while you were starting over with money that was mine. I was going to leave you the house, a good allowance. $1,500. I spat the words. You took almost $2 million and you thought $1,500 was generous. I worked for that money. We worked. While you ran the stores, who do you think held down the fort at home? Who raised your son? Who gave up everything so you could succeed? Silence. He had no answer. Take the envelope, I ordered. With trembling hands, he took it, opened it, started to read. I saw his expression change as he went through the pages. Shock, fear, panic. You're suing me? For fraud, racketeering, forgery, use of a false identity, bigamy, and concealment of a corpse, I recited from memory. I've already petitioned for the annulment of your death certificate. Soon, Walter T. Peterson will be officially alive again, and then you'll answer for all of this. I don't have money for a lawyer. You should have thought of that before. Oh, wait, I smiled. You do have money. Almost $2 million invested in 3 different banks. Except those accounts were frozen yesterday by court order. You don't have access to a single cent. He staggered, leaning against the doorframe. Helen, for the love of God. The love of God? I laughed bitterly. You invoke God's name now? After buying a corpse? After making me cry over an empty grave? After living a lie for 25 years? I loved you both. I couldn't choose. So you faked your own death. How brave. From inside the house, we could hear Claudia crying, loud, desperate sobs. Oh, and one more thing, I added. Your son is in jail. Pretrial detention for racketeering, forgery of signatures, and attempted capital flight. He tried to send $800,000 to Paraguay yesterday. It didn't work. Walter turned white. Mark? You had Mark arrested? He got himself arrested when he decided to steal from me. when he forged my signature on 15 different documents, when he sold the stores which were half mine without my consent, when he let me believe my husband was dead while he pocketed millions. "He's your son, and you're my husband," I screamed back. "Or you were. Now you're nothing. You're not Robert because Robert doesn't exist, and you're no longer my husband because I'll soon be annulling this marriage for fraud. What do you want from me, Helen?" He fell to his knees right there on the doorstep. "You want to see me destroyed? You want revenge? What?" I looked at him, the man I loved for over 4 decades, the father of my child, reduced to this, an old man on his knees, begging. And I felt nothing, not pity, not satisfaction, not anger, just emptiness. "I want what's mine," I said calmly. "Every cent you stole, with interest and penalties. I want the truth exposed. I want everyone to know what kind of man you are, and I want you to face the consequences of your actions." "They're going to arrest me?" "Yes, probably." "I'm 73, Helen. Prison at this age is a death sentence. You should have thought of that before." I turned to leave. "Helen!" he shouted after me. "Helen, please, for the years we lived together, for the memory of what we were." I stopped, looked back. The memory of what we were? Walter, we were never anything. Because I was real, but you were a lie. From beginning to end, you were a lie. And I walked away. I got in my car, started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw him still on his knees at the door, his head in his hands. Claudia appeared behind him, crying, screaming something I couldn't hear. His life, the perfect little life he built on my pain, was crumbling, and I had been the earthquake. I drove home in silence, my hands steady on the wheel. When I arrived, I called Simone. I delivered the notice. He completely fell apart. "Excellent. Now we just wait. The arrest warrant will be out Monday, Tuesday at the latest. And the accounts? The money is already being transferred to a judicial trust. When the process is over, you'll get everything that's yours. With 6 months of interest, it'll be about $2.4 million just from his share. $2.4 million, plus 1.6 from the stores, plus the house, plus punitive damages. $4 million. 43 years were worth $4 million. Helen, are you okay?" "I am," I answered, and it was true. For the first time in a long time, I'm okay. I hung up and went out to the garden. I sat on the bench Walter had installed years ago, where you could see the sunset, and waited for night to fall. Because tomorrow, the sun would rise on a new world. A world where I was no longer the weeping widow. I was the woman who had reclaimed her dignity, and I wouldn't apologize for it. The arrest warrant was issued on Monday at 2 p.m. Simone called me as soon as it was expedited. "The police are on their way to his house now. Do you want to go?" "No." I surprised myself with the answer. I don't need to see it. I had already seen enough. I had witnessed his fall on Friday, on his knees at his doorstep. The rest was just formality. But the afternoon still had surprises in store for me. At 4 o'clock, Patricia showed up at my door, Mark's wife. Her eyes were red, no makeup, clothes rumpled. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in a few days. "I came to get his things," she said, her voice hoarse. "His clothes, his documents. I need to take them to the lawyer." "Come in." She entered hesitantly, looking around as if for the first time, though she had been in that house hundreds of times in her 15 years of marriage to Mark. "His things are where they've always been," I said. "In his childhood bedroom. You can get them." Patricia went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, closets being rummaged through. 20 minutes later, she came down carrying 2 bags. She stopped in the living room, stared at me. "Are you satisfied? You've completely destroyed our family." "Your family destroyed itself," I replied calmly. "When you chose to steal from me. He's your son." And yet he stole from me, forged my signature, let me mourn a fake death while he pocketed millions. I stood up, walked toward her. Did you know? Did you know about the whole plan? She looked away. Mark told me after, when it was already done. And you didn't think it was wrong? I did. Of course I did. But what was I supposed to do? Report my own husband? I did. Patricia looked at me with a mixture of anger and respect. You're cold, you know that? Putting your own son in jail. He put himself there. I just presented the evidence. I moved closer. And you know the difference between you and me, Patricia? You chose to stay quiet when you saw an injustice because it was convenient. I chose to fight, even if it hurt. She shook her head, tears streaming. He's going to be in prison for years. Years. And I don't know if I can wait. Then don't. You're still young. You're 38. You can start over. How can you be so practical? Because I spent 43 years being romantic, emotional, believing in family above all else. And look where it got me. Alone, betrayed, robbed. I won't make the same mistake twice. Patricia picked up the bags, walked to the door, turned one last time. He loves you, you know. Despite everything, Mark loves you. Love doesn't steal. I opened the door for her. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't forge documents. What Mark feels for me isn't love. It's dependency, convenience, maybe even guilt. But not love. She left without another word. On Tuesday, I had an unexpected visitor. Claudia. When I opened the door and saw her there, I was surprised. She looked like she had cried for days, her eyes swollen, her skin lifeless, her shoulders slumped. Can I come in? She asked softly. I hesitated, then stepped away from the door. We sat in the living room. I offered her coffee. She accepted, more out of politeness than desire. I came to return this, she said, taking something from her purse. It was a simple gold wedding band. His wedding ring to me, or rather Robert's. She laughed bitterly. I don't even know what to call him anymore. Walter, I said. His name is Walter T. Peterson. Walter. She tested the name on her tongue as if it were foreign. 25 years, and I didn't even know his real name. A heavy silence fell between us. Why did you come here? I asked. Because I need to understand. She looked at me, desperate. I need to understand how someone does this. How someone builds an entire life on a lie. How he could look me in the eye every day and lie. If you figure it out, let me know, I answered. Because I don't understand either. He was arrested yesterday. Did you know? I did. 2 police officers came. In front of the neighbors, the grandkids. The children cried. They thought Grandpa had done something terrible. He did. I know. She wiped away tears. But they don't understand. To them, he was just Grandpa who fixed bikes and bought ice cream. I felt a pang of something. Not pity for Walter, but for the children. They were innocent in all of this. How much did you know, Nan, I asked, about his life before he met you? He said he was a widower, that his wife had died of cancer, that he had a son he no longer spoke to. She let out a humorless laugh. Even that was a lie. His son knows you? He was involved in the whole sham? He was, and now he's in jail too. Claudia nodded, processing. The house we live in is in my name. I bought it before I met him, with money from my inheritance when my mother died. At least that's mine. And his money? The frozen savings? I can't access any of it, not even to pay for a lawyer for him. She looked at me. Not that I would. I don't know if I want to help him after all this. You have every right to protect yourself. But I loved him. Her voice broke. I really loved him, and now I find out I don't even know who he really was. I reached out, held her hand. 2 women, deceived by the same man, sitting in the living room he shared with one while building another life with the other. I loved him too, I admitted, for over 40 years, and I don't know who he was either. We sat there for a while in a companionable silence, two victims of the same liar. When she got up to leave, she paused at the door. Are you going to get the money back? The millions he took? I am. The court has already ordered it all be returned, with interest. Good, she nodded. You deserve it. You were with him for much longer than I was. You sacrificed much more. We both sacrificed, just in different ways. She left, leaving the fake wedding band on the coffee table. I picked it up, weighed it in my hand. Another lie, materialized in gold. I threw it in the trash. On Wednesday, Mark's criminal case moved forward. The prosecutor, Ada Mendez, called to update me. Your son has accepted a plea deal. My stomach tightened. What does that mean? It means he's going to tell us everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'll turn over documents, recordings, details of the entire plan. In return, his sentence could drop from 8 to 3.5 years. With good behavior, he'll be out in 2. Mark would be out in 2 years if he cooperated. And Walter? Your son's testimony is very damaging to his defense. With all the details being exposed, Walter has no way to deny it. His sentence could go up to 10 years. 10 years. Walter would be 83 when he got out. If he got out alive. And you think I should feel sorry for him? I asked. No, I think you should be proud. Women in your situation usually stay quiet out of fear, shame, or because their family pressures them. You fought back, and you're winning. Winning. Was that what I was feeling? Victory? On Friday, a week after I confronted Walter, Simone called me into her office. I have news. Great news. I sat, expectant. First, the stores. The annulment of the sales was accepted. The buyers will be reimbursed by the banks and the properties returned to the estate. Since Walter is technically alive now, but in prison and being prosecuted, the judge has appointed you as temporary full controller. You can sell them, manage them, whatever you want. How much are they worth today? With the current market, the 3 stores together, about $3.8 million. They've appreciated since your son tried to sell. $3.8 million. Second, Walter's money. All $1.8 million has been transferred to a judicial account. With inflation and interest for the 6 months, it came to $2.1 million. Half is yours, $1,050,000. The other half remains frozen until the end of his criminal case. And the house? The house where you lived has been in your name for years through a deed he signed. It's yours. No dispute. And punitive damages? Simone smiled. The judge was generous. Considering the psychological suffering, the 6 months of faked grief, the public humiliation when the truth came out, he awarded you $800,000 in punitive damages. Walter will have to pay, even if it means selling everything he owns. I did the math in my head. 3. $8 million from the stores. 1. $5 million from his money. $800,000 in damages. The house was worth about $600,000. Total, $625 million, $6,250,000. 43 years of marriage, reduced to a number. When do I get all this? You can take control of the stores now. The judicial funds will be released in 30 days. The damages, when Walter has assets to pay, they'll likely garnish whatever he has in his name. Does he have anything? Tools from the locksmith shop? An old car? Some furniture? Nothing worth much. But we'll take it all. Leave him with nothing. Completely stripped, just as he left you when he pretended to be dead. There's one more thing, Simone said, her tone serious. Mark has asked to speak with you at the prison. He wants to apologize in person. My heart clenched. I don't want to see him. I told him you'd say that, but he insisted. Said he needs to do it before he finalizes the plea deal, that he can't move forward without at least trying to ask for your forgiveness. And if I don't go? You don't have to. But, Helen, can I speak as someone who's seen many cases like this? Go ahead. Anger is good, justice is good, even revenge feels good sometimes. But in the end, what truly heals is closure. And maybe you need to hear what he has to say. Not for him. For you. I sat in silence, thinking. I'll think about it. Okay, but don't take too long. He's fragile. Prison isn't easy, especially for someone who never imagined they'd end up there. I left the office with a heavy head. $6 million. My son in prison, my husband in prison, my life turned upside down. But for the first time, I had control, I had power, I had a choice. And now I had to decide what kind of woman I wanted to be from now on. The one who carried her anger to the grave, or the one who chose to move on. It took me 4 days to decide whether to visit Mark in prison. 4 days of looking at the phone every time Simone called asking if I had made a decision. 4 days of replaying memories. The little boy running through the house, the teenager who hugged me when he got good grades, the man who cried on my shoulder when his wife had her first miscarriage, and the same man who forged my signature 15 times. On Thursday morning, I finally called Simone. I'm going this afternoon. Do you want me to go with you? No, I need to do this alone. The regional penitentiary was a 40-minute drive from the city, a gray building surrounded by high walls and barbed wire. I parked in the visitor's lot, went through security, exchanged my purse for a plastic number. They led me to a small room with a metal table and 2 chairs, peeling walls, the smell of cheap disinfectant. A small barred window let in a sliver of light. I waited. 10 minutes later, the door opened, and there he was. Mark had lost weight. The orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame. His beard was overgrown and patchy. His eyes had deep, dark circles. But it was his gaze that broke me. Empty, defeated, without the spark of confidence he always had. He sat in the chair across from me, his hands trembling on the table. Mom? His voice was broken. You came. I came. An awkward silence. He fidgeted with his hands, not knowing where to start. I don't know what to say. I spent a week thinking about what to say, and now I have no words. Then listen. My voice was firm. I came here because Simone said you need closure before the plea deal. But I need you to understand something. I didn't come here to forgive you. I saw the pain cross his face. I know I ruined everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But Mom, I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. Never. But you did. Deeply. I know. Tears started to fall. Every day in here, I think about it. I think about how you must have felt when you found out. The betrayal, not just from Dad, but from me too. And I hate myself for it, Mom. I hate myself so much. Self-hatred doesn't change what you did. I know, but I need you to understand the context. When Dad came to me with that insane plan, I had just discovered the debts. $800,000, Mom. The stores were sinking. If you had filed for divorce and taken half, there would have been nothing left. The stores would have closed, the employees would have been laid off. Everything Dad built would. Everything we built, I corrected. I was there, Mark, for every decision, every sacrifice. I gave up my career as a seamstress to raise you while your father built the business. I was a partner in that too, even if it wasn't on paper. He hung his head in shame. You're right. I was selfish. I only thought about the assets, the money, the future I had planned. And in the process, I forgot that you're my mother, that you gave me everything, that you deserved respect above all else. And even knowing all that, you forged my signature 15 times. I was desperate. The debts were piling up. Creditors were threatening to sue. I needed to sell the stores fast. Then you should have told me the truth. I slammed my hand on the table, making him jump. You should have come to me and said, Mom, Dad didn't die. He ran away and left a mountain of debt. I need your help to sort this out. I would have helped you, Mark. I would have signed whatever was necessary. I would have worked with you to save the business. But the truth was too horrible. Dad had faked his own death, bought a corpse. I was involved. How could I tell you that? With courage, with honesty. Two things that apparently don't run in our family. Mark sobbed, covering his face with his hands. I ruined everything. I lost you. I lost Patricia. She filed for divorce yesterday. I lost my freedom, my reputation, everything. Patricia filed for divorce. Said she can't wait 2 or 3 years for someone she doesn't even know anymore. That she's going to start over, find someone honest. He laughed bitterly. I don't blame her. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the situation. Mark, you're going to be in here for at least 2 years if you cooperate, maybe 3. And when you get out, you'll have a criminal record. Trouble finding a job, social judgment. It's going to be hard. I know. And I'm not going to make it easy for you. I'm not paying for a lawyer. I'm not putting money on your books. I'm not visiting every week. You made adult choices. Now you face adult consequences. I understand. But I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. When you get out, if you've truly learned something, if you've really changed, then maybe we can rebuild something. Not the relationship we had before, that's dead, but something new, based on honesty. He lifted his face, his eyes hopeful. You're saying there's a chance? I'm saying I'm not going to abandon you completely, but I'm also not going to pretend everything is okay. It will take years, Mark. Years for you to earn back my trust. And you might never fully get it back. But at least I won't write you out of my life like you tried to write me out of your decisions. Mom. He reached his hand across the table. I looked at it. My son's hand, that hugged me as a child, that I held when we crossed the street, that forged my signature 15 times. After a few seconds, I held it briefly. A quick, cool clasp. But I held it. Use this time in here to think, Mark. To really reflect on the kind of man you want to be. Because the man you were, I don't recognize him anymore. I'll do it, I promise. Don't promise me, just do it. I stood to leave. Mom, he called as I reached the door. I turned. Thank you for coming, for not giving up on me completely. I'm your mother, Mark. I'll always love you. But love doesn't mean blindly accepting everything. Sometimes, love means letting a person face the consequences of their own actions so they can learn. I left the room, returned the plastic number, got my purse. When I reached the car, I finally let the tears fall. I cried for the son I had lost, for the man he could have been, for the relationship that would never be the same. But I also cried with relief. Because I had done the right thing, even though it hurt. 3 months later, sitting in the first-class cabin of a flight to Lisbon, a glass of white wine in my hand, I looked out the window as America disappeared below. Beside me, Carmen and Beatrice, my childhood friends, were laughing at something on a tablet. We were headed for a 25-day Mediterranean cruise. Spain, Italy, Greece, Turkey, all the places Walter had always promised to take me and never did. Now, I was going on my own. Well, with my friends, but dependent on no man. The stores had been sold for $9 million. I invested half in safe funds that gave me a passive income of $15,000 a month. The other half I set aside for projects. The first project, I donated $300 to a nonprofit that helps women who are victims of financial and patrimonial abuse. Women like me who had been robbed, deceived, and manipulated by their families. The second project, I bought a small studio downtown and started sewing again. Not because I needed the money, but because it had been my passion before I gave it up to be just a wife and mother. Now, at 69, I was reclaiming who I was before all of this. Walter had been sentenced to 8 years in prison. With Mark's plea deal, he couldn't get a single day reduced. He was serving his time in a medium security facility. Claudia no longer visited. The grandchildren didn't even really know where he was. The family invented a story that he had moved far away. Mark had been in a halfway house for the past month, on good behavior. He worked in a woodshop inside the prison, earning minimum wage. Patricia had divorced him and was already dating someone else, I'd been told. I visited him once a month. The conversations were short, still tense, but he seemed different, more humble, more self-aware. Maybe prison really was changing something in him. Or maybe it was just my imagination. Time would tell. "Helen, you okay?" Carmen nudged me. "You got quiet all of a sudden." "I'm great," I smiled. And it was true. Just thinking about how much life can change in a few months. "It changed for the better," Beatrice said, raising her glass. "A toast to our friend who went to hell and back and came out stronger." I don't know if I came back stronger, I reflected. But I came back more aware, more vigilant, more myself. "That is being stronger," Carmen said, smiling. "Because strength isn't about not falling. It's about getting up after you fall." We clinked our glasses. The plane took off, and as we rose above the clouds, I thought about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. I lost my innocence, my ability to trust blindly, the fantasy that family was sacred by definition. But I gained self-knowledge, independence, the certainty that I could survive the worst and still choose to live, not just exist. 6 months after the cruise, it was a Saturday morning when I got the call. "Helen, it's Simone Wright. Good morning." "Did something happen?" "Walter. He had a heart attack in prison yesterday. He was in the infirmary. He didn't make it." The phone almost slipped from my hand. "He died?" "Yes. For real this time. The body is being released to the family. Since you were technically still married, you're the next of kin." Walter was dead. For real this time. I felt nothing. Not sadness, not relief, not anger. Just a distant emptiness. "What do I need to do?" "You need to decide on the funeral. If you want to bury him, cremate him, where?" I thought of the $90,000 Italian marble crypt where a stranger was buried. Cremate him and scatter the ashes at sea. No ceremony. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. He already had one funeral, a very expensive one at that. He's not getting another. And Mark, he's been notified. He's asking to attend the funeral." "There is no funeral. He can say goodbye to the ashes later if he wants, but I'm not making a spectacle. Not again." I hung up and sat in silence on the balcony of my studio. Walter was dead. The man I loved for 43 years. The man who betrayed me for 25. The man who faked his own death to abandon me. Now he was truly dead, and I felt at peace. Because I owed him nothing more. Not love, not hate, not forgiveness. He was just a part of my past now, a painful part that taught me valuable lessons. A year after it all began, I was in my studio sewing a wedding dress for a client's daughter when Mark appeared at the door. He had been released on parole 3 weeks ago. He was thinner, his hair cut short, a neatly trimmed beard. He wore simple clothes, jeans, and a white shirt. "Mom, can I come in?" "You can." He entered slowly, looking around. The studio was small, but cozy. Mannequins draped in fabric, sewing machines, spools of colorful thread. My space. "It's nice in here." "Thank you. What brings you?" He took a deep breath. "I came to say goodbye." "Goodbye." "I'm moving to Austin. I got a job in a custom furniture shop. It's a fresh start, far from everything, from everyone, where nobody knows my story." "I understand." And before I left, I needed to thank you for not giving up on me, for visiting me in prison, even when I didn't deserve it, for coming to scatter Dad's ashes with me, for giving me this last chance to be someone better. I put my sewing aside, stood up. Mark, I didn't give you any chances. You're the one building this with hard work, with different choices, with humility. That's all on you. Even so, you could have abandoned me completely, and you didn't. Because I'm your mother. And mothers don't abandon, but they don't cover up either. That's been my biggest lesson this year. True love is letting a person face the consequences and grow from them. He nodded, his eyes welling up. I'm going to make it work in Austin. I'm going to rebuild my life from scratch. And one day, I'm going to make you proud of me again. I'm already proud of the man you're trying to be. He approached hesitantly. I opened my arms, and for the first time in over a year, I hugged my son for real. Not a formal hug, but a mother's hug. When he left, carrying only a suitcase and an uncertain future, I stood at the studio door watching him go, and I realized I had achieved something rare. I had turned pain into growth, betrayal into wisdom, loss into a new beginning. Today, 2 years after seeing Walter alive in that Costco, I wake up every day in my home, go to my studio, sew my designs, have coffee with my friends. I have $15,000 a month in passive income. My studio brings in another $8,000. I don't need anything or anyone. Mark calls me every week from Austin. He's dating a woman there, honest, hardworking. He says one day he wants me to meet her. Maybe I'll go. Or maybe I'll ask them to come here. I haven't visited Walter's empty tomb since I found out the truth. I had a simple plaque put on it. Here lies a stranger. May he find peace. Because that tomb was never my husband's. It was my innocence's, and that deserved to rest in peace. Sometimes, when I'm sewing, I think about everything that happened, and I ask myself, was it worth it? Destroying my family? Putting my son in prison? Publicly exposing all that pain? And the answer is always the same. Yes. Because I learned that dignity is non-negotiable, that respect is not something you beg for, that self-love is worth more than any family tie built on a lie. I learned that it's never too late to demand justice, that being 70 doesn't mean you have to accept everything quietly, that age brings not only wisdom, but also courage. And most importantly, I learned that the best revenge isn't destroying the one who hurt you. It's rebuilding yourself, stronger, freer, more you than ever before. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what impacted you the most on this journey. Every story I share here is a reminder that it's never too late to demand the respect we deserve. Like this video if you believe dignity has no age, and subscribe to the channel to continue following real stories of overcoming, justice, and new beginnings. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how old you are or how much time you've lost living a lie. What matters is the courage to wake up one day and say, from now on, I choose the truth. I choose myself. And that choice, my friends, that choice changes everything. The end.